Hey everybody, welcome back to the Preacher Boys podcast. I know today is not a normal release day, but I have some really good news. Back in November 2020, a couple of months after I started the show, I did an interview with a guy named Bruce Kennedy talking about his experience growing up at North Valley Baptist Church, and we talked a little bit about the infamous Mike Zachary story. We talked about some of the preaching and the theology at the church, but one of the stories that came up around the 49-minute mark was a story about a guy named Norlan Macias. Norlan was a member of North Valley Baptist Church, which is, of course, a IFB megachurch pastored by Jack Trieber. And for his job, he was a janitor at a couple of different school districts. The reason Norlan was mentioned here on the podcast is because Bruce Kennedy actually disclosed some abuse that took place with Macias and several other boys, including Bruce himself. And so on this episode, I want to give an update about what's happened almost 4 years since we recorded that episode. And I want to give you a little bit of a recap of what we talked about on that previous episode. Now, the great news is that today, July 11th, 2024, Norlan Macias has been apprehended and he is being held without bail. The County of Santa Clara released this official statement today. A South Bay man has been charged with sexually molesting teenage children during church trips at his house on a Morgan Hill lake. The case against 54-year-old Norlan Macias of San Jose was launched several years ago when a retired police officer heard a man describing a molestation on a podcast called Preacher Boys. Macias is charged with molestations that happened during a period that lasted longer than a decade, between 2001 and 2012. Police and prosecutors are seeking others who may have been victims of the South Bay man, who was a janitor at the Campbell Union and Mountain View school districts. Macias faces 11 counts of felony sexual molestation of 5 minors, ranging from 8 to 17. He will be arraigned this afternoon at 1:30 in Department 23 in the Hall of Justice in San Jose. If convicted, he could face life in prison. Quote, "I would like to thank the retired police officer for his diligence and dedication," District Attorney Jeff Rosen said. "As with many officers, his mission of protecting our community's children never stopped. I hope all of us take that same responsibility." End quote. The case against Macias began in 2020, when a retired San Jose police officer recognized Macias from the video podcast, which documents child abuse associated with religious institutions. He called 911. The defendant used to take a group of teenage parishioners of the North Valley Baptist Church out on a boat at Lake Anderson in Morgan Hill. The boys would then go to the defendant's house in Morgan Hill, where the molestations took place. While investigating this case, a detective stumbled on a 2013 report by a minor who said that he too was molested by Macias. He stated that the defendant lived near him and that he molested him after hiring him to do work on his home. After the initial statement, that case was closed due to lack of victim cooperation. If anyone has any information about the suspect in molestation, they should contact Deputy District Attorney Joanna Lee at joalee@dao.scc.gov.org. That's JOALEE at dao.scc.gov.org. In addition to what was said by the County of Santa Clara, I wanted to add the statement that I gave to a journalist who reached out to me asking for comment. I told the journalist that I've been a public advocate against clergy abuse for nearly 4.5 years. It can often feel discouraging and frustrating when no one with power seems to be listening and pushing for real change. I've talked with many victims who have expressed the same sentiment. Today is a reminder of the importance of not remaining silent. It's a reminder that our voices hold power. I'm thankful for the bravery of Bruce Kennedy in sharing his experiences with Norlan Macias and at North Valley Baptist Church on my podcast in 2020. I'm also thankful for the law enforcement officer who heard this message and decided to look into the case. They are both heroes. It is my hope that this story encourages survivors in similar high-control religious groups to find their voices and speak up, so justice can continue to be carried out. I'm really excited about this development in the case. As I said in my statement to the journalist that reached out, it can get extremely frustrating covering these stories because so often nothing happens. And so when you actually see justice starting to be carried out, it's really powerful, and I hope it encourages others who are waiting to share their story to share their story. And I hope it also encourages people to listen to these stories. I don't know where this story would have gone if a retired police officer had not heard it and contacted the authorities to get this case looked at once again. And so I'm so thankful for everyone who's moved this story along. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are probably hearing this who maybe weren't listening to the show back in 2020, which is probably most of you. And so I wanted to take the rest of this episode to play the clip from that episode that details the actual abuses that Norlan Macias carried out against one of his victims. This is from my conversation with Bruce Kennedy. You can listen to the full episode by clicking the link somewhere around this video or the podcast episode, wherever you're listening, to hear the full context. But anyway, before I press play on that, I just want to say thank you again to everyone who supports this show, who has been listening for a long time, and most importantly, to those who have bravely shared their stories and advanced the cause of justice, not only for yourselves, but for survivors all over the country. You guys truly are heroes. All right, here's my conversation with Bruce Kennedy from the full-length episode I did back in November of 2020 about Norlan Macias. Norlan Macias is a name that's come up quite a bit. And when I first was told the name, I was like, okay, who's that? And it was a very vague, like to the point I was like, is there something actually wrong? And then they were like, he's a member. I was like, well, that's not really North Valley's fault if he's a member. But who is Norlan Macias, and what was the big issue there, or the problem that kind of came to the surface there?
Yeah. So with Norlan, like you said, he wasn't on the church staff.
Okay.
So we can't really say that what he did was the fault of the church, but
Right.
The church was where he found his victims, usually. Yeah, let me just start from the beginning of that story. So for me, I had a friend who I had recently become best friends with. He had recently moved next door. He was also going to the school. He was a couple of years older than me. And I don't know how he became involved with Norlan. I haven't talked to him about this. I don't know if I will. My relationship with that kid was not great last time we talked.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me that he knew this guy that had a boat, and he wants to take us out on the lake, and he's got inner tubes, and we're just going to have a good time and go boating on Anderson Lake. Right? So, all right, cool. And so he introduces me to this guy, Norlan. We basically, I don't know if I had to convince my parents, but it was me, this other kid, his two brothers, very much younger brothers.
Okay.
And I think one or two other kids. We all went out boating with just him. And on the boat, this was my initial experience. I'm telling that, but there was much more after this.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of like starting it this way. So on the boat, on the way, he was making let me back up a little bit. When you're in the Christian ethos, especially a North Valley type of place, and if you're in the school, anything that's remotely of the outside world can almost get a cool factor.
Most of you don't even know what this is, but they used to have something called a catalog. And the catalog had things in there, and I'd see those, man, I like that. The catalog also, and God knows this is true, I know that there's a section in the women's that I should never look at. And I made a covenant with God, I would never use the catalog to ever go to a woman's section, because I don't want to see something I don't need in my mind. I need to protect my mind.
Especially if you're starting to detach from some of the more hardcore ideas and doctrines and stuff.
Yeah.
But you're still there because that's just what you do. That's where your family is, or this is just what you know, and you're finding your way. Things of the world can start seeming cool, whether it's sexual jokes, music, whatever. People that are into that can become like the cool people in a way. So for us young Christian boys, he was cool in that sense. He was an older Christian man, but he would let us listen to other music in the truck. He would make sexual jokes. And usually they were just like sexual dude jokes. They weren't like little boy jokes or anything like that. But he knew how to be a bro, kind of. That kind of loosened us up to be like, yeah, he's just another dude like us, and we're just
almost like a big brother kind of thing. Yeah. That shows you the cool music and he's just cool.
Yeah. He's got a boat. He takes us in his truck to the lake, and we're listening to music on the way there, talking about stuff that we thought we shouldn't probably be talking about, but it's cool. And get to the lake. While we're on the boat, that continues. And
Right.
it gets to a point where I'll just tell you what he did. So you guys want to see something cool? And at this point, we were swimming outside the boat. Like, we're not on the boat, we're swimming around the boat. And he's like, you guys want to see a dolphin? So he pulls his penis out and he pees out of the water, and then he like dives. And we were all like, what just happened? And we were like, I guess it was funny. All right, whatever. So it was what it was. And we just went on. And
Yeah.
I can't remember if there's anything exactly like that. Oh, I think pantsing happened a lot.
Okay.
How dudes in high school like to pants each other, just like
Right.
to mess with each other. I think that was definitely a thing. He would get other people to do it too. So it wasn't like he was the only one doing it.
Yeah.
He'd be like, hey, you should go pants him while he's not looking. Like
Right.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
We did inner tubing. It was a fun time. I'm not going to lie. It was a bunch of dudes out on a lake, seemingly having what seemed like innocent fun. Maybe not all the way innocent.
But it's at that point, again, it's that normalizing thing where you're sitting there going, oh, he's just one of us. It's like how a bunch of teen guys do dumb stuff, but you're negating the fact he's how old?
I don't know exactly, but he was probably in his 40s already at this point.
Okay.
Definitely like middle age.
Not one of the boys, essentially.
No. We get down on the lake, the boat back on the trailer, take it back to his house, and he treats it like you're his crew of sailors almost.
Right.
So it was this whole thing where we went to his house early in the morning. Everybody was part of getting the boat ready, and it was just like he had this thing where he would teach you to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is how you hook a trailer up to a truck. This is
Right.
how you get a boat ready to go on the water. And that it's like he's giving you value. And anyway, so we're all this like crew helping him get his boat back to his house. And we get back to his house. Everybody, once the boat's parked and cleaned and covered and everything, and it's almost like probably 5 or 6 at this point. It's like, all right, everybody, we're going to shower. So everybody went in the house, and it's quite a story, man. So we went in his house. His 2-story house. So he had a few people hang out downstairs and then there was, let me count. So it's 1, 2, 3. There's at least six of us outside of him. So maybe 3 of them go upstairs. 3 of us stay downstairs. So I don't know exactly what happened with the 3-ish that went upstairs first, but while he helped them get started showering, me, my friend at the time, and I think maybe one of his brothers were downstairs, like sitting on the couch, either watching TV or just talking or something. And he came downstairs. And he's like, hey, you guys should come in my office really quick. So we did. And he had porn open on the laptop. And he was like, what do you guys want to watch? And this was not my initial exposure, but this was my first time not being on my own and
Right.
just
where it's acknowledged like as a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It was purely, for me, it had been purely curiosity before that point in terms of searching for porn and looking at that. It wasn't something I'll be fully honest, man, I hadn't masturbated before this.
Okay.
It was just the curiosity of seeing what's out there on the internet. I had done it like 3 or 4 times and I had already gotten caught too, actually, by my parents at this time. So the 3 of us were looking at this and he's, yeah, here you go. There's the lotion and go to town. And I don't remember exactly what was said, but I made it clear that I hadn't done that before. And so he taught me how to do it. He didn't actually touch me at that time. He just showed me what to do, basically.
Oh.
And then 7th or 8th grade,
Wow. Okay, so this is prior to the Zachary stuff then.
Towards the end,
Okay.
and then after.
Okay. Got it.
So remember, I finished with my lessons around 8th grade, 7th or 8th
Right.
grade when I finished.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
After, as terrible jokes are wanting to come out of me, it's not good. When I was done with that, apparently some of the other boys had finished showering. So he's like, all right, the rest of you go up and shower now. So the other 3 or 4 of them were still up there, in towels, just chilling in his bedroom. And he had 2 showers. So there was like one that was in his bedroom, and then there was a second shower that was just kind of like the upstairs bathroom. And so he had one of us each going in each of those. And basically he had us all line up, get naked, put towels on, and then go. He would say, all right, it's your turn, go in the shower. So after you're in the shower, he would then walk in the bathroom and open the curtain and be like, all right, here's the soap, here's the conditioner, here's the lotion, as if you didn't know how to shower.
Right.
And looking at you the whole time. And at that point I was like, hey, this is getting weird.
Right.
But he was able to play it off as if it was normal. He was like, no, I'm just showing you where the lotion's at and everything. Don't worry, man. And he just went back out. So I finished showering. I come out. I was the last one to finish with the showering. And then my friend, when I walk out, is laying on the bed getting a massage from this guy. And like a stomach massage, like face up. I was like, okay, this is a little interesting. But they're like, yeah, it feels good. He's just going to give you a massage. It's going to be fine. And remember, there's 5 other kids.
And was this all of your guys' first time going out with him, or was this your first time?
This was my first time, and I think at least 2 of the younger kids' first time.
Okay.
I don't know if it was my friend's first time or not. I'm sure I knew at the time, but I can't remember.
Okay. Well, I was just, because obviously, and I know too, in a situation, what were you thinking at the time? Was there, before that, were you thinking like, this is super weird? Or was it just at that point he'd made it, like throughout the day, had made it so normal to just be off color that it was like, it didn't register?
It's like right in the middle there, man. It was definitely weird to me, but something that I was, the last podcast I was listening to, and I think it was your actual most recent one, I think she was saying something like, when you're in that ethos and that mindset, it's so hard for you to have a different point of reference to say, oh, this is actually not okay. And this is actually somebody who's taking advantage of me and not just trying to help or be cool or be open. And I think part of what helped me justify it at the time was a lot of it was the idea that there's the fear of being gay that a lot of us that grow up in that state of mind are burdened with. And it's complete, bullshit. But
ain't nothing normal about 2 men kissing one another in the mouth, ma'am. I've been all my life to the hospital. They got a blue crib for the boys. I said blue for the boys and pink for the, and blue for the, and it's still blue for the boys. And ma'am's got on a pink sweater. That's a lady right there. She's got on a pink sweater because she's a lady. Pink's not for boys. I don't look at me, you effeminate looking thing. Pink ain't for boys. Next thing you'll have on ear bobs and a dress. Somebody say amen. Blue is for, and pink is for, amen. I'm checking this platform up here for. Blue is for, and pink is for. It's supposed to be that way. I've never been to the hospital. There's a rainbow crib for the sodomite baby. Well, look at Steve. He's gonna be a sweet little thing. Yes, it is Stevie. You're a sweet little something. He's something sweetie, Sammy.
They've stolen the sign of God's justice and the sign of God's promise, and I'm talking about they've desecrated it for the sign of diversity. Hey, I ain't standing with that junk. Hey, man, I don't care if it's your granddaughter, who it is. It's not right and never will be right. I never did want to marry a woman wearing steel-toed boots and a metal lunchbox and a hard hat. Somebody say amen. Amen. It's not Adam and Steve. Amen.
It frames the way you think about your social situations.
Yeah.
So in order to even think that maybe he's doing something other than just helping me out as a guy, I would have to think that he's a pedophile or gay. And those things are just not on the table of consideration in your mind.
And you're also saying there, like, if you make a statement expressing that it is, it's going to get flipped on you and be like, why are you making it weird?
Yeah.
And I don't,
gay? You're really gay. Yeah.
And I don't ask these to be like, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you say something was wrong? This is, I think, for people listening who maybe haven't listened to accounts or read, like, this is one of the most common grooming things, like with men to boys, is, hey, let's watch porn, or hey, here's a magazine, or hey, I know you do this already. And the fact that he was audacious enough to do it at the scale he did is shocking. To have 6 people there where any one of you could have easily started turning the tables on it. But yeah, it's bizarre. So back to your story. I was just curious, was anyone there expressing any kind of like discomfort, or was it just some people had already been there, so it was normal, and then you're too young? You're also in that age where you just don't say anything because you're the young one there.
It was a mixture, right? Because some of them were less comfortable than others, but the collective group was okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wanted to really like ruin what was going on. And it wasn't clear enough that he was a predator.
Yeah.
Have that flipping of the mind state. It was just, he's an older man with experience and he's showing us the ways of the world.
Yeah.
And he's awesome because he's exposing us to these things that we've been hidden from our whole life. And he had years of practice at doing this. And he would tell stories about people who, when I was young, were already middle-aged men.
Yeah.
That he had been around and doing boating trips with, and big names in North Valley.
Wow.
Most of which had made their way out, by the way.
Had made their way out of North Valley?
Out of North Valley, yeah.
And what do you say big names? You mean like, you don't have to give away names, but like big names like staff names, or like...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, staff names.
Wow. Okay.
He finished massaging my friend, and that it didn't seem sexual. And I don't know if he even touched him in a private area outside of maybe his like legs or something. But when it was my turn, he had me lay on my stomach so he could massage my back. And I remember I had just showered. I was fully naked, just on his bed. And there's 5 other kids besides him watching this happen. I don't remember if he did much while I was on my stomach. He had me roll over on my back, like much sexually. He had me cover. That's right. When I went on my stomach, he had me put the towel on my butt. And then I flipped over. He's okay, cover yourself. I'll just massage your arms and your legs. And then when he was massaging my legs, he did not stop. And he started getting closer to my crotch. And I was like, okay, that's enough. And he's trying to decide how much detail to give here, because there's some very specific anatomy things.
Yeah. And that's, again, like I said, it's totally up to you. And if you want to leave it at that, that's fine. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Due to lack of personal grooming knowledge and importance, mainly because guys in Christian world, you don't talk about the right way to clean yourself and things like that. Like those are off limits in terms of conversation. So if you aren't properly taught, there can be some issues, especially if you're younger. And it's valid, but I'm trying to figure out the right way to say it.
Yeah.
Basically, he determined while he was touching me there, he determined that I was not properly caring for myself. And I made it clear that, hey, you need to stop. I actually got myself up, got on the other side of the room. I was like, that was not okay. And he's like, no, man, you got a problem. You got to take care of that, basically. And he was right. I did have a problem that he did help me identify, and I later, learned how to take care of better. But he also did grab me and play with. Yeah, that wasn't a big enough red flag for him that I was probably not the right candidate. So the rest of that evening, I don't want to say it went fine, but that was pretty much the end of that type of stuff.
Okay.
My friend, none of the other kids thought it was like a violation. They're just like, yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
And I guess you have something you need to figure out. But I didn't internalize it as molestation. It was weird, but it was.
We also coded it as I'm being helpful.
Yes, thank you. Perfect. And that happened. That was a regular pattern. So in terms of him being helpful in exchange for your time, attention, and or favors. The actual physical stuff, that was definitely the worst thing that happened. I was around him off and on for about 3 years after that point. And it was much more me and him directly, and that other friend, I stopped being friends with him. He ended up moving away. And I had a much more direct relationship with Norlan at that time. And there was some friendship. I'm not going to lie. He did teach me some things, but it was always with an agenda. There was a time where he wanted to paint, or he was painting a room in a neighbor's house. And he was like, help me paint this room. You'll get experience painting. It'll be great. And so I did that. And maybe like halfway through the day, we went back to his house and went back in his office and did the porn thing again. And that had a bigger effect in my life farther down the line, the trend that he started there. But it was
it was a friendship from your side. It was very calculated from his side as far as what he was doing.
Yeah, he would try to take us on trips and go do different things, but any time that my dad or any of my parents were going to be involved, then something would come up. It wouldn't work out, whatever. There was one time he wanted to take us skiing or to the snow, like maybe me and 2 or 3 other kids, and my dad was going to go. And he was like, oh, I got to work. We can't go anymore or something. I don't remember what it was, but and my dad remembers that too.
Yeah. Did your parents ever think it was weird or ever say anything about it? Or was it another one of those things you just didn't talk about in that kind of culture?
It's sad because there were some signs and they did have some reservations about it.
Yeah.
But being in that culture, if other people are saying it's okay, or if it just seems like it's okay, it probably is.
Yeah. If other parents are sending their kids and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I was getting closer to being adult at this time. I was getting my driver's permit. So he would take me driving and be like, hey, I'll teach you how to drive. You can get some of your seat time with me. And he'd hold my hand on the shift knob and that type of stuff. And it was just like, now hold is the wrong word, but just extra touching, similar to what I had said about Mike. There was lots of extra touching anytime anything was being shown, how to do something, how to whatever.
Yeah. So when did this kind of situation come to an end, at least for you? And when was it just a conscious thing? Did it just naturally, you just parted ways? And then did anything ever happen? Did anybody ever say anything? Did Was anyone ever informed of what was actually happening on these trips?
As far as legal action, I don't believe anything's been done.
Hmm.
What got me to stop hanging out with him, to be honest, I think he just stopped hitting me up. I can't really say that I consciously stopped hanging out with him. It may have been that he just lost interest.
Yeah.
But I was very busy. I still am. I keep myself constantly doing things, so it's easy for me to lose track of people. And I think that was probably what just happened. I was starting to work full time, and
you were
less accessible and maybe less interesting too. If his type is the younger one, I was not that anymore.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Preacher Boys podcast. Be sure to go check out the full episode with Bruce Kennedy when you get a chance, if you haven't heard it already. And be sure to subscribe to the Preacher Boys podcast to stay up to date with similar stories just like this. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on a future video or podcast episode or wherever else you connect with the show.